Well, hello there. Welcome back to another episode of the Collectibles Dad. Today showing all of my comic book collection. How do we build a comic book collection? In the year 2024, man, so many different options being pulled in so many different directions. Where do we even start? I'm going to talk about my journey, how I got here where I am today, and maybe where I'm going tomorrow when it comes to my comic books. Stick around. What's going on, Collectibles family? Back again, another day, another Collectibles video. Today is going to be a fun one. We're going to show some comic books today instead of talking trash about all the other comic book content creators. I'm just kidding. It's all in good fun. A little bit of storytelling, and we'll get kind of personal today. We'll switch it up a little bit. Normally, between both of my channels, this channel, the Collectibles Dad, and the Sports Card Dad channel, we don't typically touch on serious topics. Occasionally we do. It's a lot of goofing around with Alf and just having a good time. But today, going to go back in time because a lot of what, in my opinion, building a comic book collection is, it's always this ever-evolving thing as far as what your taste of the day is, and it can certainly change. You might be set in your ways on something for a couple of years and then wow, discover some whole new genre, whole new set. Everything can change for you. And since I got into the hobby going back to 2018, whether it be trading cards, buying graded comic books, buying graded video games, or starting lineups, or whatever it is, for me, it's always been the 80s, 90s nostalgia pull when it comes to my comic book buys, with a little bit of a caveat to that, and we'll talk about that as well. So I was born in 1981. I'm 43. And so this, to me, honestly, guys, when it comes to comic book collecting as a kid, I understand it was a heavy production era when it comes to trading cards and comic books, but I really view it as a golden age for comic book collectors. This is an example of a funny book that I picked up. I remembered having this going back to when I was a kid. I was obsessed with Image. Image, for those that don't know, I know that many of you watching, of course, do, but Jim Lee, Todd McFarlane, Silvestri, all of these guys broke off from Marvel. They headed up Image Comics, Rob Liefeld, which still lives on today. They're all kind of doing their own things, but this studio, if that's what you would call it, this production company, Image, Walking Dead is done through Image. There's a lot of independents that run their stuff through Image. But I was there as an 11-year-old when they got started with Image Comics, and it was everything, man. It was so different because you have to remember Todd McFarlane coming off of that Spider-Man run. Of course, you've got the famous, amazing Spider-Man 300, that origin of Venom, but that cover has been redone a million times, different people paying homage to it. It's just an incredible time. The late 80s, early 90s, but the early 90s, man, these guys were rock stars. When they left Marvel, they shocked the comic book industry and started their own thing. It was unbelievable. And of course, for me, I had a run going probably 1 through maybe like 45 or so of Spawn. Spawn was one of my favorite characters going back. And I think everybody kind of viewed Image. When we go back, when I was, thinking about it, and it wasn't just me, this was also adults that were speculating back then, not at the same level that we see today. But I think what was happening there in the time, if I'm trying to understand kind of what we were all doing there, because even as a kid, I loved the books, but then I also thought to myself, these could be worth something down the road. It was that time, same was happening with trading cards. People putting away boxes of cards, stacking them up. Hey, we gotta keep this stuff. Look what's happening with vintage baseball cards. They're becoming more valuable. We gotta hold on to these, 80s, 90s trading cards. Same goes with comic books. It was thought to be, hey, Image is Marvel. It's gonna be the next Marvel. Maybe Marvel goes out of business. Maybe Image is it. There was a lot of speculation around all of the new Image stuff. And so before I get into all of my graded books, this is something I picked up not that long ago. These aren't the ones that I had when I was a kid, but I wanted the chrome covers. I wanted to go back and take a look at these books, and I'm not going to pretend like these are like amazing storylines or anything. This is just nostalgia gone crazy for me when you look at Supreme, Pit, of course, Savage Dragon. There's a bunch of them. Shaman's Tears, just a really, really cool cover. Hellcat #1, of course. Prophet, the Max #1. These were just books where they were cool characters, cool new characters, They had kind of crazy, funky art that you weren't seeing everywhere else. So as an 11, 12, 13-year-old, this was something different. It was something new. And I think just these guys going out on their own, you wanted to support it. And again, Image was that cool company that everybody was gravitating to at that particular time. And so for my comic book collection as a whole, I have pared it down. I used to have maybe 50 to 60 graded books. I now have about 20 graded books because I'm just refining what it's going to look like. And again, like I said, I collect graded video games, graded trading cards. There's a lot of stuff in my collection, so I'm trying to balance this out. And when I'm looking at each category, just trying to figure out kind of what am I prioritizing in my collection. And Image and Spawn, really Spawn is my favorite character going back because again, that was the longest run. Every month I was buying the new Spawn book. It just felt like every month they were good. The art was always really cool. The Violator villain. I mean, the Spawn villains were just really cool. I don't know. There was just something about the characters in those books. It was an easy read. It was just really good. I learned later on about Malibu Sun. I did not know about this when I was a kid. And of course, this is basically like a catalog that was sent out to dealers almost, the Malibu Sun, just promoting what was upcoming. And I wanted to get this in a high grade, this particular book. There's not a ton of these that have been graded overall if you look at the census. I'm not going to sit here and say that it's some, mega rare book, but I wanted to get it in a high grade. It was a priority for me to do so because other than Rust #1, this is the earliest kind of Spawn cameo, if you will. They did change, you see the Spawn writing, they did change that writing kind of last second to what you see here, but that was going to be the writing, how it was here, and they kind of changed the font around a little bit. I like this one better. For me, Spawn is the big nostalgia character. My best, I guess, book that I've probably got is the 1997 version of Spawn 1. This was a much more limited copy than, of course, the #1 from 92. They sold like 5 million copies of it or something. I had a copy of this pre-pandemic going back to like 2019 that was signed in the red ink, and I wanted to get one that was signed in the yellow ink to kind of match up with the label and kind of has that bumblebee look to it. I just really like the yellow ink on the black book and wanted to get it in a decent grade. 9.4 it came at a good price, and so this one was a priority for me to pick up with the McFarlane signature. What I've done is sold off of a lot of the books that I had kind of in 9.6 or 9.8 and just kept a few of them that are, I guess, the most special ones to me. And this is one of them, again, Ghost Rider #1. I remember this being on the newsstand. My dad was in the military at the time and going to a military base and picking up a copy of this and just thinking like, wow, this cover is unbelievable. I love the cover on this one. Of course, it is the first appearance of Death Watch and Dan Ketch as the Ghost Rider. It's not a rare book by any stretch, but again, it was just one of those where the nostalgia hits. And I've got a bunch of these kind of pop culture, Beavis and Butthead #1. I've got the Simpsons books in 9.8. So again, you're seeing a theme here with just having kind of those books, so some of those classic 80s, late 80s, 90s books, and just having them in 9.8s. This is an example of a book that I've been moving off of books like this, but I just kept this one. I really do enjoy the cover on this one. It was great to see the success of Wolverine, Deadpool. You look at what's going on in Marvel right now. They've struggled over the last few years, and it just shows you again when you had Ryan Reynolds talking in the movie about, hey, they're going to have us doing this until we're 90. These guys will probably make $1 billion from Marvel movies in their lifetime. The trifecta of Robert Downey Jr., Ryan Reynolds, and Hugh Jackman in the Marvel Universe, their milkshake brings all the nerds to the yard, and this is going to continue on. I know that Marvel's made some mistakes here over the last few years with some of the storylines and just different stuff that they decided to roll out when it's like, man, just stick to what works. Why are you guys going out, just going way out on a limb, with some of these stories where it's just like, just keep on doing with the stuff that just works. I don't understand. They got really creative with some of the stuff, and it just didn't make a whole lot of sense. They made some bad decisions from a storyline perspective and how they were going to roll everything out. But it does look to be that they are back on track with Wolverine and Deadpool. The Doomsday storyline with Robert Downey Jr., you just know it's going to be strong. It's going to be very strong. They're bringing back the Avengers, and everybody shows up for the Avengers. So it is going to be good. I kept this book. This is one of the first books that I ever bought when I got back into comics, X-Men #17. And this was literally just like, oh, cool. Like, this is an early X-Men book. I think I got it for like $50 or $60 at the time, and I think that's about what it's worth now. So it's not super special to me other than when I was getting back into the hobby. This was kind of one of those early X-Men books where I was thinking like, man, that is really one of the older books. And I thought it was a good price point. It's a Magneto cameo and so forth. This is kind of the same story when I was getting back in where I was like, man, Tales of Suspense with the early Iron Man stuff. This is really cool. So again, just examples of stuff where I was just getting back into comics and learning about graded comic books. Guardian of the Galaxy. I was just trying to figure out like, what is this? What is all this graded stuff, these graded collectibles, and hung on to some of my favorites. My favorite villain probably of all time is the Joker. This is his standalone book that came out in 1975. I want to get a high grade copy of this book in a 9.6. I like the cover. Of course, you got all the villains here, but man, one of my big Grail books is the first appearance of Red Hood, which of course is kind of that first Joker appearance going back. They're very expensive. I would not buy a restored book other than that one. That would be the one where just to have a copy, I would have a purple label just to have a copy of that book because it's just so iconic to me. They're expensive even in a restored label, but that's one that's on the bucket list. We will see if it happens. If there's a comic book price crash, I don't know how much that one's going to be affected, but that will be high on the list if there is to pick up. Incredible Hulk number 4. The Incredible Hulk number 1 is, again, one of those grails that I really do want to get to. I'll explain kind of my future vision for my comic book collection, but this is kind of the origin story retold in number 4. And again, this is just all about the history, going back to these Silver Age books. Hulk is one of my favorite characters and the backstory and everything that goes into it. And so these early Hulk books, I would love to have, 1 through 10. That would be amazing. Family and I are huge Stranger Things fans, so I do have the trading cards as well, but I've got 2 of Stranger Things number 1 signed by Millie Bobby Brown, and this is where she signed 011. She signed 11 on it. She doesn't sign that way anymore. She signs MBB when she's signing autographs, so I thought this could be kind of cool, and maybe I give it to my daughters or something. I've got one of each. Again, as a Stranger Things trading cards collector, I do think that Stranger Things is going to have a long runway. I think there's going to be a Stranger Things universe. I don't think that when season 5 comes out and ends that that's going to be the end of Stranger Things. I think they're going to have different spin-offs and things from it. I don't think it's going anywhere, being Netflix's number 1 original series that they've ever produced, their most marketable ever in their 20 plus years of existence is Stranger Things. It's kind of like saying, oh, we're not going to make any more Star Wars. They've done very well off of all the Stranger Things merch and the comic books and the trading cards and that sort of thing. I don't think that we have seen the end of Stranger Things after this final season comes. I'm excited, but again, she's not signing that 011 for 11 anymore. Maybe she will down the road, but I was thinking maybe these will be a little bit more limited than people think moving forward. So kind of a fun speculation book. All right, the last couple of books. Superman number 16 in a 6.5, a really nice copy of this book. And again, this is history of comic books. To me, these Golden Age books are unbelievable. I love the early Superman books, really like 1 through 20. A lot of cool covers in there. This is the first Lois Lane cover, and I thought that would be kind of a cool one to pick up. These are ones at the right price points. If I can just catch them right at good auction price, I would like to add these Golden Age books. I think Superman is going to be always relevant, and these are the first issues of Superman. And then last but certainly not least, I had this book in a 2.5, Giant Size X-Men number 1, going back pre-pandemic. When they shot up in price, I sold the 2.5. And then again, about 6-7 months ago, I picked this up. This is an 8.5, of course, CGC 8.5. Just wanted to have a nice copy. This is the new team, iconic cover, Giant Size X-Men number 1. I am an X-Men fan. I do want to get X-Men 1 from 1963. When I look at kind of the future of my comic book collection, I've really kind of weeded out the stuff that I like it. I don't necessarily love it. And a lot of those nostalgia books, when I go back, I showed kind of that early Image stuff or, Death of Superman, 1993. These are inexpensive books to just buy ungraded. And that is really where my focus is going to be. I've decided I don't necessarily need that book in a 9.8. I like from a display standpoint to have them in the cases. But it's like, man, I don't need to pay the extra money. I can just buy them ungraded, enjoy them that way. They're a dime a dozen. You can get them, all over the place. So a lot of kind of my nostalgia books, I'm just going to buy ungraded and enjoy them as is. And really my buys moving forward are going to be the big keys, like what we were talking about. The first appearance of Red Hood Joker going back. the X-Men 1 copy from 63, Amazing Spider-Man 1. I want a Hulk number 1. These are all huge books, and again, I'm going to have to save for those. I've made some big buys on the trading card side, and that's where I kind of see it going. Avengers 1 is another book that I really want to have. So, I mean, I've probably got 7 to 10 kind of major keys that I really want to focus in on. They don't necessarily need to be high grade, but just a nice presenting copy of those, and just I want to kind of check those off the list here over time. I'm 43. At age 50, I'd like to have my collection exactly where I want it, kind of so I can kind of enjoy it all together. All right, my friends, that is all that I have got. Like I said, my collection is really based a lot on nostalgia, number one, and number two is just the appreciation of the history of comic books and key books and the importance of those books, you know, based on how those characters have developed over time and how I view those characters, as opposed to, you know, just trying to buy books that maybe, you know, might be worth more in a couple of years. Or, oh, this is a cool cover, impulse buy. You know, just trying to be a lot more selective with my collectibles buys. But that's part of the fun, really, is figuring out, okay, you're looking at major keys. Prioritize those major keys. It can be very difficult. Make a top 5 list. Which one are you going to knock off this, and at what price point? What grade are you looking for? And really prioritizing and organizing, there's a lot of fun in that. Prioritization. It's hard to do. It's really, really hard to do. Prioritizing, you know what, which books do you really want, like really badly want, over the others? And can you sacrifice, instead of buying those 10 minor keys, buying that one major key? That's something that I've struggled with in the past on the trading card side, really in the collectible space in general. I'm getting better at it, but it's always a struggle. My friends, let me know your thoughts. How are you collecting these days? How are you building out a collection? I want to hear it. Stay healthy, stay awesome, and I will talk to you again later.